Hi, everyone. I'm being honest when I say I'm not checking my text messages right before it's a timer on the stopwatch. So don't think I'm that rude. And the funny thing is, we tested everything when I came here, and as soon as I stood up, I got a blue screen of death on my Windows laptop. I know the Mac people are like, yes, awesome. That's what we always say. So it's such a pleasure to be here. It's funny being here because I was at the scholarships and bursaries event as well. We had helped ESG3, myself and a few friends had helped launch the Malcolm X scholarship at Grebel. And so Fred had asked me to say a few words about that scholarship. So it's kind of like deja vu, except for Paul is here instead of Fred and a few other people instead of other people. So it's great to be here. I actually want to start with something that Marcus mentioned in the last event. And quote, he said, Grebel was imagined as a space where people from different experiences and traditions and cultures might share their wisdom and experience in a spirit of mutual curiosity. I'll take the wisdom out of that for myself, but I definitely have the experience and spirit of a few different ideas. And that's why I felt that when Beverly asked me to say a few words, I definitely want to come and share some of my thoughts. And I kind of want to start the thesis. Let's say you might ask, what's a line in the sand? And this is a famous statement from a Christian Ethiopian Abyssinian king many, many years ago, about 1,500 years ago. His name was King Najashi of Abyssinia, which is present-day Ethiopia. And inevitably, when people of revelation, prophets, etc., or revolutionaries even, come with a message of truth, and uniting and getting rid of oppression and getting rid of inequality, they are persecuted, inevitably, anytime, all the way from as far as we can remember. And so when Prophet Muhammad, myself being a Muslim, when Prophet Muhammad came to Arabia, where at a time where people were burying their newborn daughters out of shame of having daughters, or they were oppressing poor people in unbelievable ways, or torturing their slaves, when he came with a message saying, we have to stop this, he was persecuted and his believers were persecuted. But very few people, both Christians and Muslims, don't know is that the first person who granted them sanctuary from persecution was a Christian king named King Najashi of Abyssinia, present-day Ethiopia. And he's made the famous statement, which I hope to show you. Hopefully the YouTube video works with all the tech going. He said, there is no difference between us and them than this line in the sand. So leave them in peace, and they have our protection. So this is kind of the crux of it. Another thing, these are the observations that Marcus was talking about, sharing curious observations. I'm originally from Pakistan. Do we have any Pakistanis in the audience? Oh, Sidra? Noman. I met them at the last scholarships and bursaries event. It's not like we all know each other in all of Canada. That's Ali there, also from Pakistan. I'm just kidding. When I grew up with this adversarial relationship between India and Pakistan, any Indians in the audience? Awesome. And the holy people who are doing holy, maybe their parents or, yeah, awesome. India is one of my favorite places in the world as a Pakistani. And the treatment we got when we went there, I went not as a Canadian citizen. I wasn't a Canadian citizen when I went in 2014. And we got VIP treatment because we were Pakistanis. It's one of my favorite countries. My uncles who are generals in Pakistan will not like that comment. And that's basically it. Why are we taught to have these rifts? because of political reasons, because of military reasons, because of economic reasons, nothing else. So in my mind, India was a faraway land, and the proximity was very far. And when I sat on a flight from Lahore to Delhi, and we went into the air, we took off, and as soon as we took off, it felt like we were landing, and we were in India. And the first thing that really struck me was how close we are in proximity, but in my mind, we were very far away. And this is something I wanted to bring to you. So Abraham used to live in Najaf, which is southern Iraq. And the driving distance from Najaf to Mecca, where the prophet of the Islamic faith was born, is less than 20 hours. But in our minds, many times we think of these faiths and religions as being very distant from each other. I'd love to read a little bit from the Bible, from Genesis. So this is talking about Ishmael. The matter was very distressing to Abraham on account of his son, Ishmael. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be named for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation from him also," which is the descendants. Prophet Muhammad was a direct descendant of Ishmael with about 8 generations, I believe. And then later it says, "Then when she went and sat opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot, she said, 'Do not let me look on the death of the child.' As she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, 'What troubles you? Do not be afraid, because God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift the boy. I will make a great nation of him.'" So I always thought about this curiously, as Marcus says. Is that how we perceive these great nations and faiths? Christianity mentions the descendants and the nation that will come from Muhammad, and at the same time, I'll show you in a couple of slides how the Quran talks about Christianity. So we can see the family tree of Muhammad from Abraham to Ishmael and about some generations. And then other intersections, because language can also create distance and lack of proximity. If we go to the Aramaic, which is well established in Christian theology as well as literature, Jesus spoke the language of Aramaic. And if you go to the Aramaic dictionary right now and type in God, G-O-D, the translation in Aramaic will come out as Allah, A-A-L-A-H. So many times we think of these concepts as foreign, and it creates distance and lack of proximity. But when we gain knowledge and we start thinking about these things, we say, isn't it all the same? Isn't it coming from one source? Why are we always focused on the differences? So I mentioned earlier, what does the Quran say about Christianity and Christians? Could I get a show of hands for how many people have maybe not read the whole Quran, but portions of the Quran? Okay, awesome, great, wonderful. And I just want to qualify that a bit. By reading, I obviously meant not from the news, because they will make you read certain things, but actually reading, like this. This is right next to my bed all the time. I'll tell you a funny story. My mom, as a Muslim who's now over 70 years old, always born and raised and always lived in Pakistan, was raised by Christian nuns in a convent, post-colonial environment in Pakistan. And I actually, when I was a teenager, voluntarily I was the only Pakistani in the country to voluntarily take Bible knowledge as my GCE Cambridge O-level exam. So when I walked into the room where the exam was happening, my Christian friends were like, "Get out, wrong room." It's like, no, it's the right room. And they're just, right before their exam, they were completely flustered. Like, what is he doing? I got an 88%, and not bad. But the Quran says in chapter 5, the chapter entitled "The Table Spread with Food," and you will find the nearest of them in affection to the believers, those who say we are Christians. That is because among them are priests and monks, and because they are not arrogant. And for anyone out there who doesn't subscribe to this unity and sameness and similarity and harmony, they just have to come to this event, right? It's very simple, but we don't really get those opportunities. How many of us knew here, before seeing this slide, that the same Muslim family has protected the key to one of Christianity's holiest sites for 850 years? Awesome. 1, 2, 3, 4. Amazing. How many people show up to the supper? 180? 160? Okay. So 4 out of, amazing. And if you could help spread that message amongst the community, it would be awesome. I'll quickly read from here, seeing that I have about 3 minutes left. It brings up a lot of tears because it's just so, Jerusalem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, is one of the holiest sites in Christianity. It brings up a lot of tears because it's just so profound to experience where he was and what he did. Obviously, talking about Jesus, Jesus, peace be upon him, said one woman at the church, "While Christians of all denominations come to pray, the key to the church is entrusted in the hands of a Muslim man. In a daily ritual, Adib Jode al-Husseini walks through the narrow alleyways of the old city of Jerusalem. He follows in the footsteps of his ancestors who have passed the key from generation to generation for over 850 years. I wanted to be here to find out about shared values and how the differences amongst us are really not such big differences," said Amelia Roseberg, who was visiting from New York. "Our pride gets in the way. And when our pride gets in the way, we revert to the worst within us. In a region fraught with tension, the custom of Muslims and Christians working together has become an example of coexistence and harmony. Jerusalem is not just for the Christians, it's for the Christians, for the Muslims, and for the Jewish," said Judeo al-Husseini. "We are here living together, and we are praying to peace." And I wanted to also clear something, an elephant in the room, because of the media biases that exist. Just a quick stat. There's a stat that says that a negative story associated with Muslims is 5 times more likely to make the newspapers than one which is not. There's an inherent systemic bias, like we have with so many groups. African Americans, black groups, anti-Semitic groups, Islamophobic groups, many others. And so any time where any mention of violence is mentioned in the Quran, it is only mentioned in a defensive manner. I'll give you an example, and you can get a Quran and read from it. "And as for such as do not fight against you on account of your faith, and neither drive you forth from your homelands, God does not forbid you to show them kindness and to behave towards them with full equity. For verily God loves those who act equitably." This is for any type of group that exists, and any Islamic scholar will abide by this. "God only forbids you to turn in friendship towards such as fight against you because of your faith and drive you from your homelands, or aid others in driving you forth. And as for those who turn towards them in friendship, it is they who are truly wrongdoers." So finally, I don't want to go over my time. This is slide 11 of 12. Beverly had a special request to talk about Ramadan, which is coming up in about a week. And the interesting thing I found putting these slides together, the core of the verse in the Quran which enjoins fasting says, "O you have believed, decreed upon you is fasting as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous." There's actually only 5 verses in the Quran that refer to fasting, but there's 35 verses in the Bible that talk about fasting. Some like Matthew 6, 16, 18. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And this is exactly in compliance with the principle in Islam, which says that the one deed that you do, which is only for God, because people don't see it, they don't know whether you're fasting or not, is the fast. So I'd like to end off with a final verse from the Quran, and Beverly was very adamant that I read from the Quran, so I just made it a point to do that. Our differences are a blessing. In chapter 49, verse 13, God says, O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you may know each other, not that you may despise each other. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of God is he who is the most righteous of you. And God has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. Thank you so much.